Idam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Because of ignorance and my spiritual master who
leave the traces of man, leave the traces of man, then show your non-satisfied, even possessing one of the 7 islands, consisting of 9 Varshas, even if I possess one island, I will hope to get the others. Be of the person of all the kings, Maharaj Prabhu, Maharaj Gaya, achieve proprietorship over the 7 Dvipas. They could not achieve satisfaction or find the end of their wishes. One should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny. What is significant in never-ending happiness? A person who is not self-controlled will not be happy, even if possessing the 3 worlds. Material existence causes discontent in regard to fulfilling one's lusty desires and achieving more and more money. This is the cause for the degradation of the material life, which is full of repeated birth and death. But one who is satisfied by that which is obtained by destiny is fit for liberation from this material existence. A Brahman who is satisfied with whatever which will attain, increasing enlightened with spiritual power, with the spiritual potency of a dissatisfied Brahman potency when water is sprinkled upon it. Therefore, O King, from you, the best of those who give charity, I ask only 3 bases of land. By such a gift I shall be very pleased. That is fully satisfied. Receive that which is absolutely needed. Shukadeva SWAMI continued, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead had thus spoken to Bali Maharaj, Bali smiled and told him, all right, take whatever you like. To confirm his promise to give Vamanadev desired land, he then took up his water pot. Is that it? That's it? Okay, and today we're focusing on text 24. Okay. Yadrichayo papaninam Santushto vartati sukham Na santushtas tribhir lokayera Ajitatmo pasaditahai
Yadrichayo papanena
Santushto vartate sukham Na santushtas tribhir lokayera
Ajitatmo prasadite
Yadrichayo papanena
Santushto vartate sukham
Santushto vartate sukham Na santushtas tribhir lokayera Hello.
Ajita mo prasadite
Prasadita hai
Yadrachayo papanena
Yadrichaya papanena
Santushto vartate sukham
Santushto vartate sukham
Na santushtas tribhir lokayera
Ajitatmo prasadita
Yadrachayo papanena
Santushto vartate sukham
Santushto vartate sukham
Na santushtas tribhir lokayera
Na santushtas tribhir lokayera Ajitatmo prasadita hai
Yadrichayo papanena
Santushto vartate sukham
Santushto vartate sukham Na santushtas tribhir lokayera
Ajitatmo prasadita
Ajitatmo prasadita
Yadrichayo papanena
Yadrichayo papanena Santushta Varakate Sukham Asantushta Sthirvirlokaye Jitatmopasadita. Jai Haribo Sadrichaya, as offered by the Supreme Authority according to one's karma. Upapaninam, in whatever is obtained. Santushtaha, one should be satisfied. Bharatate, there is. Sukham, happiness. Na, not. Asantushtaha, one who is dissatisfied. Tribi lokahai, even by possessing the three worlds. Ajita Atma, one who cannot control his senses. Upasaditahaya, even though obtained. Translation: one should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny. I think we could read this together. One should be satisfied with whatever he achieved previous destiny, for discontent can never bring happiness. A person who's not self-control will not be happy, even possessing the three worlds. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, great. If happiness is the ultimate goal of life, one must be satisfied with the position in which he is placed by providence. This instruction is also given by Prahlad Maharaj. Sukham aindriyakam daitya deha yogena dehinam sarvatra labhyate daivad yata sukham ayatmanaha. My dear friends born of demoniac families, the happiness perceived with reference to the sense objects by contact with the body can be obtained in any form of life according to one's past fruit of activities. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. That's from the Bhagavatam. Guess which canto? 7th canto. Are we cheating? Hopefully not. 6.3. Okay, you're clear. This philosophy is perfect in regard to obtaining happiness. Real happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita 6.21. Sukham atyatmikam yatad buddhi grayam atindriyam veti yatcha chaivayam titish chalati tatvataha. In the spiritually joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. One has to perceive happiness by the super senses. The super senses are not the senses of the material elements. Every one of us is a spiritual being, aham brahmasmi, and every of us is an individual person. Our senses are now covered. Thank you. Covered by material
Mysteries, persistence, activation, motion, 5 modes of
material 5 modes of nature. Yes. Okay. Material elements. Okay. All right. And because of ignorance, we consider the material senses that cover us to be our real senses. The real senses, however, are within the material covering. Denosmin. That's it. Don't think you're better than Prabhupada. Within the covering of the material elements are the spiritual senses. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam. When the spiritual senses are uncovered By these senses we can be happy. Satisfaction of the spiritual senses is thus described. Rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchite. When the senses are engaged in devotional service to Rishikesh, then the senses are completely satisfied. Without this superior knowledge of sense gratification, one may try to satisfy his material senses, but happiness will never be possible. One may increase his ambition for sense gratification and even achieve what he desires for the gratification of his senses. But because this is on the material platform, he will never achieve satisfaction and contentment. Are you nervous, Prabhu? That's okay, don't worry. Just joking. According to Brahminical culture, one should be content with whatever he obtains without special endeavor and should cultivate spiritual consciousness. What did you say? Knowledge. Then he will be happy. The purpose of the is to spread this understanding. People who do not have scientific spiritual knowledge mistakenly think that the members of the Krishna consciousness movement are escapists trying to avoid material activities. In fact, however, we are engaged in real activities for obtaining the ultimate happiness in life. If one is not trained to satisfy the spiritual senses and continues in material sense gratification, he will never obtain happiness that is eternal and blissful. Fool? Did somebody say fool? How about full? Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.1 therefore recommends Tapodivyam putraka yena sattvang shudyed yasmad brahma sokyam tvanantam. One must practice austerity so that his existential position will be purified, and he will achieve unlimited, blissful life. Thank you very much. Yeah, the real strong message that comes through in this episode between Vamana and Bali is that you'll never get satisfaction. Doesn't matter how much you acquiesce. It doesn't matter how much you accumulate. It's never enough. It doesn't matter how much you own, how many storage units you have that you pay for every month. And when you stuff everything in there that you consider yours, it's never going to be enough. It's just not like that. It's a little bit like fire that never gets gratified. Doesn't matter how many, how much timber you put into the fire, Agni will just keep going, There's like a bottomless pit or an endless stomach for Agni. So in the same way, we have no limitations. There's a good thing that we actually do have a stomach, because you know what it's like. You look at something over there in that next room, this is, oh my God, it's to die for. And what triggers is your senses are going, yes. Your mind is going, yes, yes, yes. And then your senses also go, yes, yes, yes. But then when you go down to sit and take all those yeses, it ends up that, no, enough. The stomach says, enough. I remember Niranjan Swami came to visit us here, and our dear Mother Yashamati, who passed away recently, most of you may know her, she had a sort of a interesting personality and interesting nature. She would always kind of like push it on you. Why didn't you do more? this is new. It's good for you. It's Gujarati. There's lots of sugar in it. You know, I mean, whatever she would use as an argument, you know, to get it in there. And I remember Niranjan Swami getting quite dramatical. I can't take any more. It started off like this, I can't do it. And then it got intensified, the pitch raised. I can't, don't you understand? I can't take any more. I could have used it in a drama. It was kind of cute to see, actually. There are limitations. And if we could learn that in the early part of our life, that'd be good. That's one of the reasons we fast, you know. In the regular culture outside, there's not much case for fasting, you know. Sometimes people fast for, you know, material causes, social issues. Like when I walked in Ireland from Belfast to the city of Cork, took me 2 weeks, but you know, there's been all this upheaval in Ireland for the longest time between the Protestants and the Catholics. I don't know why. They believe in the same Jesus. But, you know, there's some people who actually were protesting. And I'm not sure if it was the Catholics or the Protestants, because they all look the same to me. But they went into they went to prison. Some of them fasted until they died in prison, you know. I guess it was allowed to happen. And you know, even, you know, Gandhi, he went on some fast for, you know, social purposes and so on like that. I want to tell you about another, it was a kind of a fast. The Toronto Star, which is the biggest newspaper in Canada, at least it was, you know, in terms of viewership and readership. And they did not a nice article about us, you know. And so one of our devotees, he was formerly a biker, a member of the Hells Angels. He was very outspoken, and he was kind of fun, you know. Actually, his name was Kamsahanta, and he was very forceful on people. And in fact, we called him Kamsa Hammer. You know, he would sort of hammer it into people. There was one Sunday feast. Be careful, don't go there, you know, like any of you. Doesn't matter how smart you are. There was one devotee in, there was a person who came for the Sunday feast. This is on Gerrard Street years ago. And Kamsanta didn't like the philosophy that person was coming through. So he got up like this to challenge him, and the other guy got up to challenge him as well. And then the temple president, Uttama Shloka, brought a hammer because he had a reputation of being Kamsa Hammer. And he was going like this, challenging the guy. And this hand was free, and the temple president put a hammer in his hand. And then he looked at him, you know, so we were talking about forcing the issue, forcing food, forcing religion on people with a sword, or taxing them to death, so they're forced to, you know, succumb to another way of thinking and being. These are not very healthy, you know, approaches to life. In fact, it's a life based on fear, isn't it? It's better to base your life on love, right? As opposed to fear. However, I would like to add a little something there. It's good to have some fear. You have to have some fear of guru. You have to have some fear of karma, you know, and say elders, authority. There has to be a little bit of that there, so that you'll be corrected. Otherwise, it doesn't happen so much, you know. It can't just be all, you know, like just a lovey-dovey kind of situation in the culture. There has to be somebody who puts their foot down. You know, I'll just give you an example. Dhruva Maharaj, he was a great soul. We know that at age 5 he became very evolved, and he sort of imposed it on himself by going out into the jungles where, you know, there's wild dogs that, they act like a pack, and they'll get you all tired and they start biting you, and it's one thing after another. It's like gruesome just to think about, like a 5-year-old kid being devoured, and his father actually was thinking like that. There's a shloka in the Bhagavatam where it actually states, maybe my son is eaten by wild dogs, you know, like what do we have there in Bengal? We have the jackals, that kind of thing. They can be very mean and vicious. So, anyways, it's good to have a little bit of fear in your life, and but it can't just be that. That's the problem. That's the issue. So we should also have a little bit of healthy fear in our lives, and that is a component of life itself. We always talk about what is it? We eat, we sleep, we mate, and we defend. Sometimes Prabhupada uses the term fearing, eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, right? Fearing or defending. Like we oftentimes defend ourselves for so many years. I'm a little late because I was up late at night and we were doing the, counting the inventory, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the case may be. Whatever this is the excuse. I'm not pointing towards anyone in particular. It's always nice that they... I was raised as a Christian, and there was a lot of fear-based, dynamics there. If you don't do this or you will go to hell, and that's always a problem. Like there's, what tyranny means. There's a tyranny of either or, and in our Vedas it's a little different. It says, you did do this, you'll get this achievement, okay, you failed the grade, but you have another chance, you have a second chance, right? I saw recent reels that said, give me a second chance. Okay, so second chance is there. And I remember meeting a fellow on the Trans-Canada Highway, it was Canada Day, and he pulled over. This is in Dryden, Ontario. It's way up north where they do mining or they do timber or something like that. And it's real stinky in the air. But he pulled over and said, hey, how are you doing? Happy Canada Day. I said, Happy Canada Day. And, I don't know if you know who I am, but I've been seeing you for the last few months. And says, what do you mean? Said, well, I'm the guy that drives houses across the country, It's a 4-lane highway, and they have like wide load, and there's always a caution, a truck in front and behind, with a little siren, not the sirens, but the caution, amber light flashing a little bit. So I'm that guy. So I'm the one that's been forcing you to get off the road. So, oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, thanks. Nice to meet you finally. And I remember meeting his son was sitting next to him in the car, and he said, "That's your son?" And they went on, and he said, "Yeah, that's my son. Well, where's the mom?" Because I'm always like very traditionalistic person. I was raised that way. Wherever there's a child, there has to be a mom and a dad. Those days, and he said, "Well, she's just not around. She's his mother has been forced to leave me." And I mean, that's from his side. But the point is, so much pressure is put on people to do things against their will. Going back to Christianity, the flames of hell will come, or you'll be stricken with a lightning bolt. Those kind of images were cast onto people who would not follow the policies of that particular culture. Yeah. So anyways, it's good that there are some policies, and policies are there to protect, isn't it? Police, and that's why police are very necessary. Can you imagine what Toronto would be like if all the police went on strike for one day? Can you imagine? There would be looting, there would be probably rapes, there would be, all kinds of people just tearing down the highway. So it's good to have some policy, and they remind you 2 points or 3 points, demerit points. What everyone needs to aspire towards is merits. We want merits, we don't want demerit points for what we do in life. We want, what are they, like golden stars or whatever they give you when you're a kid at school. They still do that. When you do well in some subject, they'll put a little golden star on there just to give you a little bit of a boost. So we need that kind of thing. But you also need some kind of warning as well. The fifth canto of the Bhagavatam is like a real good warning, at least a section of it. You look at some of the pictures, and I remember when the book first came out, I said, oh my God, what? This is going to happen to me, the images of, embracing a hot iron woman, if you're too lusty or something like that, and people, Rurus coming at you and staring at you and attacking you and then being pulled apart and going to a place called Kumbhipaka, whoever wants to go there. So it's good to have a little bit of that kind of stimulation. We need to know that we have to behave. That's the point. And when we say someone should behave, it means they're following Dharma. Dharma is really a magic word for us. You have to follow your duty, your responsibility, your particular codes according to your nature, either as a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Krishna makes a big issue about it. In which chapter from Bhagavad Gita?
4.
4, yes, that's right. Who said 4? Oh, thank you, you're right. Chatur Varanya Mayashrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. So there are 4 social and spiritual orders that Prabhupada keeps talking about. That's called Varna and Ashram. And Prabhupada probably uses the word Varna and Ashram like so many times, you can look it up, probably more than Krishna. I'm being honest with you. Look it up. It's just, and why? He wanted to back up the system. It's created by God. Krishna created the system. Now we know the dark side of it is when people identify too strongly with one of those positions or posts, either as Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. It can go to your head, and you can exploit other people, on the basis of that. We have reflections of that in the Mahabharata, and even Arjuna rejected his older brother, Karna, didn't know it was his brother, said, leave, you're not qualified, because he was raised by a chariot driver, and so he wasn't qualified as a Kshatriya. This is the ugly side of it all. And the whole history of India has been kind of blemished by the distortion of the Varna and Ashram system. And also Europe has got a history of this kind of hierarchical madness or craziness. It's terrible. And as everybody knows, in the French Revolution, people were fed up. They say, that's it. And when Marie Antoinette, who was the queen, they asked her, we don't have bread on our tables, and why don't you get cake? The famous line, that was their famous mantra. Maybe there's more to it, but there's an ugly past. And even when you start to implement something good like a Varna and Ashram system, how long will it take before we distort it, before we make a mess of it? Even chanting Hare Krishna, which we do in the morning, it's something that's very pure. And it feels like that when you go at it, and you start to block out everything else. And there's so many things that try to set their way into our mind. And as Krishna says in the Gita, this is just a reminder from the Gita, he says, wherever the mind wanders, bring it back under the control of the self. That's all. So we try. It's a little bit of a struggle, isn't it? It's a bit of a fight in the morning. Are you all involved in that fight, that battle? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah. So, because your eyes are going there, therefore I'm going there. Yeah. It's Varna and Ashram is structure, and we need structure, and we need policies to live by. And if we don't have that, if it's all just love, lovey-dovey, leniency, then we are going to experience, everything will just sort of plummet down to a tamagun platform. So we need restrictions. Just like I have a complaint in Mayapur, and my complaint is that there's like a major road there where people go and park. There's like a paved highway at the stretch near kind of the Gada building. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. But there's no lines on the road like what people are used to in everywhere else. It's just like most of India. It's just like every man for himself, like your scooter, bus, you have to sort of, navigate yourself through, and it's very uncomfortable. It's very unsettling. And so there needs to be those parameters. Is it true? We have parameters here. Even like the way we're set up here, these are parameters, right? The tables, that 2 rows of tables here, there's a parameter. It's all set up for our benefit so that we can be close, right? And we can be set in a chair. And you've got a table so you can take notes down when they're worthy of taking notes down. We got a second level chairs up there. So there's some intelligence behind it. So because if you're just sitting on the same level, you can't see. But now we were ready to throw those out. And no, we need them for the conference room here. So anyway, structure is important. Marriage is like a structure. And, the whole system of brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, it is also a structure. There's a sense of orderliness. And, does anybody know, what's the name of the fellow here is in Canada? Suzuki. What's his name? David Suzuki. He was quite an intellectual. He's quite world famous, right? He was a Canadian guy. And he said, we should have in our culture rites of passage. You see, that's what's missing. You know what rites of passage are? It's like if you have in the Jewish system, you have a bar mitzvah for the boys saying, now you're a man, or for the girls, now you're a woman. There's, sort of, you pass over certain lines. So in our traditions, it's called samskars, right? They're like something, hoops you have to jump through, You have to prove yourself a little bit, And where they don't have that, that in certain cultures, people just basically, young people just fall apart. So there needs to be some goals, some targets to reach, right? Yes, for why not? And then that's part of structure. It's really important to have it. Don't think that we should just transcend, Even Prabhupada, like when he started his movement, he had the system, he had Brahmins, he had first and second initiates, and then he had sannyasis, and then he also saw that some people cannot maintain. So then he was very concerned. So then he felt, well, let's have a system which will, where people can be feeling less transcendental and be more, let's say, nested in a community, and therefore he was his last trip to the West was the year that he passed away, and he was on his way to Gita Nagari to establish the Varna and Ashram system, the 50% of the work that he didn't yet complete, and he didn't make it. He went as far as London, and then his health was being challenged, and then he had to go back, and then he passed away after that. But he saw that since some people couldn't maintain, whether it was sannyasa ashram or Brahminical status, then he wanted to have a system where people could be more happily engaged according to their own nature. And in the cities, it wasn't going to work out, but in the countrysides, where you have a controlled environment, it's a little better that way. That's right. So if you're putting a play together, you know what you really want? You want a space that's dark, totally dark. You don't want light coming in. And the whole idea is that you control the lighting. If you want the effect of a moon, you do it with the lighting effects. Or if you want the sun effect, daytime. So it's like a controlled environment where you start blank. And that's, to a large extent, why devotees have come, why you have come to join us here, right? You want some order in life. You want some discipline. And are you getting it? Yes. Just like I picked up about 1/6 of you are getting it. But I'm addressing you all. Are you getting it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. You're getting it. We can always use a little bit more, right? And when it comes, it hurts a little bit, but after a while, it feels really good. Yeah, I have to follow. I have to stay in line. And the fear versus love, it's really important. Vamana Devas was saying to Bali, it doesn't matter how much you give me. I know you're a charitable guy. You're Keanu Reeves. You're like he didn't say that, of course, but I mean, you're very charitable. You give millions out to people, and but I just want to let you know one thing. It doesn't matter how much you give me. I'll never be happy. And people have little. They're actually happier. You've heard the phrase, less is more. If you haven't heard it before, please put it down. Less is more. And if you have heard it, just emphasize it. Less is more. So that's when you're in Bhakti Academy, how many people have millions of dollars in their bank account here? Okay, so we got somebody over here. Okay, we'll talk to you later on. Yeah. So it's just like less is more, and more is less. That's the flip side of it. More is less. And we see many people are not happy with that particular scenario. They had calculated that, like when I was walking in Massachusetts, I was invited to a TV studio. It was more locally based. And they interviewed me for a good hour and so on. And I saw that they had a poster of the best movie ever made in the history at that particular time. I'm trying to think of the name. But the story is of a guy who had everything. He had everything. And then he died by himself, in his beautiful mansion with all these beautiful sculptures that he had accumulated over time. And he just died all by himself. So the reason why the movie is well known is that it is a black and white feature. The message is really good. It's very moral. It's very strong. Right? So the reason why, like voluntarily, we are learning that less is more, right? And the more really is the wisdom that we're getting, and making application. So Vamana is the one who's actually sending a message to Bali, who had everything. And he just had to hear this one simple truth, that you don't need it all. Just 3 paces of land. Of course, he kind of very smartly, snatched it all and outsmarted Bali, which any avatar can do. And we're hoping for your sake that you all meet some avatar that will help you to be enriched in your life, right? Thanks to Prabhupada, the message is quite clear, and we have these particular stories filtered through him, through his wisdom, and we now know that less is more, and more is less, right? Hare Krishna. I guess that's... we can kind of conclude there and leave some period for your Q&A. And I just want to say we had a very nice program yesterday. It was a church was rented, St. Andrew's, in Peterborough, and half of us made it there. The other half were defaulted. You probably heard about it. When the smoke started coming out of the dashboard, we thought, okay, let's stop. Let's get out of here. But it was really a nice program, and we met Krishnadas there. First of all, it was the local chanters. Peterborough's been a city that's had kirtan people for decades, and there's not one but 2 or 3 groups, and they, I don't say collide, but they actually collaborate with each other. So it's quite nice, and then they were happy to hear our version of kirtan. We had a chance to speak to them. And then, because the program was a little early, all the local folks came at 4 o'clock on time. And then all the other folks came not on time. But it was a nice mix anyways. We got everybody dancing and doing the SWAMI step and something like that. And we ate before the kirtan, We didn't torture people, So it was another structure. We have to live by structures, and then you'll get freedom. You'll get freedom after discipline. It doesn't work the other way. It doesn't, you know. So we're saying, don't prematurely transcend. It's dangerous. It's damn dangerous to prematurely do that. We had one devotee here. He was chanting all day long Hare Krishna, at least 64 rounds Hare Krishna, and he was, let's say, chanting, every day like that, and fasting for like 3 days in a row. And then after his period was over, he just did that by himself. He just decided to do it on his own. Kind of whimsical, really. And then after 3 days, he got his first plate of prasadam. It was like a mountain. And then once that was done, he had another plate that full. He went at least 3 times on that, tripled it. So then, where is your renunciation? Where is your transcendence? And lastly, Rabindra Swarup Prabhu, most of you know him. He's quite a scholar and a good friend of mine. He was running the Philadelphia program for the longest time. And he was talking about some cloistered nuns. They were on one of those, fasts. You just take vows of silence. You don't speak. Just one day out of the week are you allowed for an hour to speak, right? So all these nuns were doing just that, following the discipline of just don't open your mouth, right? And then I think it was on Sunday, or at least one day of the week, where they were allowed to speak for an hour. And what happened at that time, whatever they were holding inside, just kind of rolled out like, got to get it in. We only have an hour to speak our mind. So that's kind of superficial, isn't it? So we don't want superficiality in our devotional life. We something real. It has to be very genuine. It has to be like an avocado that when you cut through it, it's perfect. There's no brown spots in it. You know what I'm talking about. Talk the dark ones, not those green ones. They're kind of too watery. But I love avocados. So I just have to tell you, what should be like spiritual life should be like that, without blemish. But to get to that point, one has to simply follow the rules, live by some fear, and also live on the strength of a lot of happiness and encouragement that comes from each other. Like you Prabhus are pretty good at slapping each other on the back. Like that's what the guys do, right? The girls just, or this way, which is all quite wonderful, and it's not a problem, right? And the guys also, you're hugging. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement it's kind of a hugging movement. It's a loving movement, And that's why he was a protester. He was considered to be radical, very different in his approach, instead of the rigid tantric priest pundits and so on like that. He was very different, and people embraced his way. Of course, you have to be very careful what happened in time after he passed away. The leniency that set in kind of almost destroyed the whole Chaitanya movement, and had to be, revived again, by great luminaries. So you have to, what's the key word that we're looking for here that will indicate how you have to apply perfection in life? What is the key word? No, I'm thinking about English. Starts with the B. B. Yeah, balance. Bala. Balance. That's bala means strength, right? So strength is in the balance. Not too extreme this way. Like you look at the political landscape, everything's too extreme. And it's hurting the whole planet. It's too extreme. Nobody's hitting it. The target isn't. The truth is in the middle. It's not this way or that way. Thank you very much, Prabhu. So, questions, answers, universal forum. Okay. Where do I start? Okay, Sartak. Okay.
Somebody asked online question.
Oh, yeah.
It's Jeffrey Brown.
Jeffrey Brown. Okay.
So
How's it going, Jeff?
says, some say don't mix religion and politics, but what do the Vedas say?
Well, in the Vedas always had a system where kings who ran the program more or less after the advice by Brahmins, they were guided by spiritual practices, you know. Everything was based on Brahman for them. So you couldn't really separate the two, you know. So if Brahmins were giving guidance to the monarchs, it meant, you know, you have to observe certain auspicious days. You had to have your own sadhana. Kings always had their sadhana. That means like a spiritual workout. So you can't separate the two. But I would say that it wasn't, it was like non-denominational, their approach. Non-denominational. And it was, you know, like oftentimes we see this group is pitted against that group. It's very, very petty. But in those days, it was like dictatorial life. People run by dictatorial monarchs, like benevolent. I would just say benevolent monarchs. You know, and that benevolence always comes from a spiritual backbone, right? You cannot say your operation will work well in your nation without spirituality. It has to be there. There has to be a transcendental message out there. So does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay. I just want to know from Jeffrey if it's okay. If it got a pass, or you know, maybe 9 out of 10 or something like that. Yeah, that's the Vedic system anyways. Okay, great. Thank you. I wish we could have that system. Anybody else? Prue, you had your hand up. Rowan.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful class. I have a question that in the translation, it's all right. It was mentioned that we have to be a person who is not self-controlled will not be happy even with possessing 3 worlds.
Yes.
So Maharaj, there are so many yogas mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, like Karma Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. They also try to do like self-control.
Mm-hmm.
So is it same for them also, this thing?
Same for them. Well, all these practices, you know, whether you start with Karma Kanda, the section of the Vedas are there to improve your life, to follow some disciplines, so that your life will, you'll be able to enjoy some of the bounties of the world. You know, and all these levels, but we're just saying that Bhakti Yoga is the one that brings us ultimate happiness. But happiness comes from, it's preceded by discipline. You know, so that you're going to find. We may, let's say, condemn deity worship, but we have to be careful about that because it does, demigod worship. Demigod worship is something that puts discipline in some people's lives. And so we shouldn't knock it. You know, we should actually embrace it and encourage them to slowly go to the bhakti platform. You know, so discipline is there in all phases of life, Vedic or not. Is that okay, Brian? Good. We're just keeping it short because prasadam is really important to people's lives. Okay. Yes, bro.
Maharaj, you were talking about balance, right? You were saying that people should not feel transcendental and they should be more nested in community. So, what is the perfect balance? If, for example, if I have an option to chant 64 rounds, or I have an option to do some service here. So how should I see if I should chant or if I should go and do service?
Well, you know, I think you have to pick up on the spirit of the Guru, or like our mission. It's all about, you have to understand the heartbeat and the pulse of ISKCON, right? Established by Srila Prabhupada. So he wanted us to be very practical and to balance everything a little bit. Okay, you want to do a little extra japa, fine, but there's this one god brother of mine, he used to, when Prabhupada went for his japa walk, and he would come back at the entrance of the gate. This may have been in Vrindavan or whatever. And so the devotee would be there and recite some verse from the Bhagavatam as Prabhupada was entering the gate. And Prabhupada said, why don't you do something practical? So whatever we think is going to help my purification may not be the case. That's why you have like a guru or you have mentors, in your life. They'll be there to steady you a little bit so you don't go off course in some whimsical direction. See, the guru or the system, like whoever's above you, let's put it very clear, there's not just one guru in your life. Usually the gurus that make a big difference are the ones that are there with you day to day, pretty much, right? So they're there to keep you in check, to keep you in balance. This bala, the real power or strength, comes from listening to the guru. And then once you're kind of on your own, once you've gained some self-confidence and some precedents have been set, then it's easy to continue on from there. So if you're in a flux, not quite sure what to do, make a decision, then ask somebody who's more experienced than you. Don't leave it up to your crazy mind.
Yes. Full realization is that Guru just not only provides you torchlight, but the strength as well, like you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And the question was, Maharajji, doing worship or chanting because you are scared of Maya, or the second situation where you really have love for Krishna, that you want to get closer to him.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just because of fear we do.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you have to live by some fear, at least in the beginning stages. Later on, maybe you're fearless. But remember, we're following Vaidhi Bhakti. That means you follow some rules and regulations. And then later on, you're, beyond rules, and you just move on your own, the power of your heart. And that's called Raganuga Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti versus Raganuga Bhakti. So Vaidhi means, behave, follow your codes, and you'll feel incredible protection by doing that, Once you go beyond that boundaries and you're premature in your execution, then it's going to be trouble ahead.
Maharaj, when we read Mahabharata, it's always like Yudhishthira Maharaj is a Kshatriya, but the way he is being kind of portrayed, it's like more Brahmanical character.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere he is talking about asceticism, meditation, going to forest.
Yeah.
And still he was kind of king, he was the king and then Raj as well. It somewhere kind of confuses us, was it?
Well, I think a lot of people like Modi, right? I mean, he's probably one of the most outstanding leaders in the planet right now. So he's a Kshatriya, or at least his duties are Kshatriya-like, but there's a lot of Brahminical qualities in him, right? Isn't that what you want? You don't want a Kshatriya that just shows off with power, but somebody who's actually, moving from the heart a little bit. And so some people are like that. Brahma, he's got his own character, his own personality. Yudhishthira has his own personality. You can't cookie cut everybody. You can't say, well, shouldn't Yudhishthira be like Arjuna? Wasn't he the perfect surrendered soul? No, he's a different person. Bhima's different. And we love this diversity, isn't it? We love these characters. Most people, I love Bhima. He's just so wonderful. And Nakula Sahadev. They're 5 brothers related, but they're quite different from each other. That diversity is beautiful. Again, we can embrace the philosophy of Achincha Bheda Bheda Tattva in that regard. Is that okay? All right, so now we're going to, in the next minute or so, we're going to transfer ourselves. We're going to reincarnate into another room. And we're going to see check out the diversity of the prasadam that's there. Thank you very